Well, lawmakers only have a few more weeks of work once they get back to the Capitol after Thanksgiving. And one of the key things they'll be looking at is Governor Snyder's proposal for the financially challenged Detroit public schools. Well, we sat down with the governor in late October after he announced his plan to help the debt-ridden district. It would call for a large investment from the state.
You've talked about that at the end of the road, a 10-year price tag was going to look at about $715 million. How can the state school aid fund handle $70 million each year going to Detroit?
I believe that's possible. Again, there's always, you never know a particular budget year, but the goal here is to have it work so we can still make strong investments in education in the traditional per pupil allowance and other ways. And that would be the goal. So people will still get good allowances. And if you look, historically, we've already been doing something similar to that for the last 5 years at least. And the example I would give you is what we're doing with pension obligations. So the last few years, we've made reasonably good per pupil allowances, anywhere from $70 to $100 and some per pupil. At the same time, we've been helping school districts pay their pension obligations to the tune of, now it's running over $1 billion a year. We literally had years where we were putting $100, $200, $300 million per year aside. So in relative sense, $70 million compared to what we've been doing for MIPSers for the pension plan is actually a smaller extra obligation that we've been paying.
How do you counter the argument then, though, that you may get from school districts around the state and from legislatures who represent in those districts that you are spending that extra money on Detroit and taking away from other districts?
Yeah, there's an opportunity cost. There is not. No one will go backwards, but there is a foregone opportunity to potentially get more resources. But what I would tell you is look at the alternative that if this action is not taken, because this is to address the long-term obligations of the Detroit School District, which have been going on for years and years, in a thoughtful, effective, managed fashion, in a controlled fashion. If it's not done in this fashion, ultimately it's going to end up in court. Not necessarily bankruptcy, but in court. And I can tell you, if you do the math, and we're going to continue to provide greater information and find out the best way for people to get that message, the cost to school districts, to students, to Michigan taxpayers is significantly higher than $715 million. Literally, if you just look at the pension obligations alone that could get spread across other school districts, that's another $800 million plus on top of that.
Ingrid?
Governor, this is obviously a very different kind of solution you're proposing for the debt, but what do you say to people who might look at the situation with DPS and say, well, 4 emergency managers haven't been able to really alleviate the problem there. Why should they trust that this proposal will do the trick?
Yeah, I would say 2 or 3 things. One is one of the reasons emergency managers have been challenged in doing their work is there's a fundamental imbalance of sort of supply and demand, how many students and how many seats there are for education in Detroit. And that causes this phenomenon of underutilized buildings that if you have a school building being utilized at 80%, 90%, it's going to be financially sound as long as the central office is managed. If you have a building at 30% utilization, there is absolutely no way you can be financially sound. So what we have as an issue now is we have many more seats when you add up DPS schools, EA, and charter schools than we have number of students. So by using the Detroit Education Commission, again, following what the coalition report said, it gives us an opportunity to really get a matching, to sort of be a traffic controller, to get a better matching of supply and demand. That makes a tremendous difference right there in terms of that. The second thing is I actually have a belief and a confidence that if we can get financial stability and get more dollars in the classroom, and DPS in particular, and this would free up about $1,100 more per student in the classroom by leaving the debt with the old co, you can see improved performance. And that hopefully will create a desire of parents to say they want to see their kids go to DPS because there'll be a better educational opportunity